Hey everybody, how is it going? Today marks exactly 1 month since I started uploading these videos to YouTube, and as a thank you, I sort of thought it'd be a really cool idea to do a question and answer. I feel like I may have bitten off more than I can chew though, because the amount of comments over the last couple of weeks has been unbelievable. We started off with the intention of trying to reply to them all, but we've gotten a little bit behind, if I'm really honest. We've read absolutely every single comment. I say we, it's myself and my wife, Micah. We've read every single comment, and we will at some point get around to responding to them all. But for now, I've chosen the most frequently asked questions, or the questions that I feel that everyone's going to benefit from the most in knowing the answer. Before we get going though, I just want to say a quick get well soon to Steve. Steve Lampier is the team manager at St Piran and possibly the person I've ridden the most kilometres with on a bike. Unfortunately, last week he had a bit of an accident on the road. Steve came into a collision with a van and is currently in hospital with 3 fractured ribs, a broken collarbone, a shattered scapula, a punctured lung, and also a ruptured spleen. So please drop a message down in the comments below letting Steve know that you're either thinking of him or wishing him well, and hope that he has a nice speedy recovery and is back on the bike again soon. Right, before we get into the question and answer, I thought it'd be a really good idea to just mention some of the equipment I use. Now, most of the videos that I film are on a GoPro Hero 5. At the moment, I don't have a microphone for it. Who knew that microphones were so expensive for a start? And then the other videos I do are on an Insta360 1R, which is a 360 camera for those 360 rides. So it's unavoidable. The first question, or the most frequently asked question, kind of is revolving around me leaving GCN. Yeah, I have left GCN. I handed in my notice last October because I want to make a return to racing, which leads me on to the next point. Why did I choose St Piran? Well, I grew up in Cornwall in the southwest of the UK, which is where St Piran is based. St Piran is actually the patron saint of Cornwall, if you didn't know. And growing up down there, we were quite secluded in the world of cycling. There was no team around, no big team. There were lots of cycling clubs, but it's quite different to have an elite level cycling team to aspire to joining one day. So St Piran is based in Cornwall. It feels like the absolute natural place for me to make my return to the sport, because then I can help pass on my experience to younger riders from Cornwall. I've got quite a few young riders in Cornwall at the moment, and also in the team that are from Cornwall or have connections to Cornwall. So it's like this natural way for me to pass on that experience. But equally, the Tour of Britain was meant to be going to Cornwall this year, and it would have been fantastic to have been involved in a Cornish team with such a large race back in Cornwall. The Tour of Britain will return to Cornwall next year, or will go to Cornwall for the first time next year. And part of our project right now is to see if we can possibly get ourselves to the start line. Right then. Oh yeah, one final point. Yes, I am teammates with Cam Jeffers. That seems to be quite a frequently asked question as well. Right, here's my list of questions, which I've jotted down. Now, as great as that computer looks, unfortunately, it's all show and no go, so it takes a long time to edit these videos, which also kind of explains why the audio levels aren't always perfect. Right, first up, so again, I've chosen kind of the most frequently asked questions here, all the questions that I feel that most people are going to get the most out of. Quite a frequently asked question, but one that I've chosen here from Nabil Akhtar. A teenager aspiring to become a pro. How does a teenage rider go about becoming a professional cyclist? Well, simply, you need to go to lots of bike races, really. I think first and foremost, you have to really enjoy the sport you're doing. You have to try many different disciplines within cycling, because you may well find that actually, whilst you do prefer a certain discipline, because you just enjoy it the most, you may well be physically suited or mentally suited to another discipline without even realising it. So that could be BMX, could be racing on the track, could be mountain biking, cyclocross, road racing, could be time trialling within cycling as well. So there's loads of different places that you could try and visit and try and find your discipline, to find your groove and find out what it is that you're the best at. And after that, I'd always recommend that you either try and ride with the local cycling club, or at least with riders that have that little bit more experience than you do. Now, I appreciate that this won't always be easy, depending on where in the world you are. But on the whole, it's something that I'd always recommend. If you can't do that, there are some amazing videos on the internet these days, on YouTube, about how to get into racing, about how to progress your career as well. So actually, a lot of the old GCM videos genuinely are really very good for helping steer a young rider throughout the career. Europe's always going to be a large hub for cycle racing. So as you get older, if you can at some point perhaps have a trip to Europe just to see what it's all about. Belgium is an amazing place to go to learn to race, because there are so many races there. I think it's well known that you could potentially race 7 days of the week in Belgium if you really wanted to, within a small part of the country, and you could ride to every single race as well. And that seems to be a really common pathway for a lot of really successful riders. And also the racing is just good fun over there. It's really competitive. But again, because you've got so many chances to have a better race the next day or the next week, it's just a great place to learn. Right, next up is a question which was asked by John and Carter Lewis. Carter Lewis replied to John's question. Why do I enjoy racing or riding, and how to make it more enjoyable, and what was easier, getting back into racing the second time, or was it going around the first time? So it's a lot easier when you know what you're doing. So the second time round, hands down, is a lot easier. Plus the fact that I've trained for all of these years in the past means I've got this massive catalogue of experience, and also my fitness, I never really lost it, to be honest, because I made sure I was quite active last year, or in the last 2 years, because technically it was 2 years ago yesterday that I last raced on May the 31st. What would make cycling more enjoyable? I think just finding a discipline within the sport of cycling that you really enjoy. I don't like traffic on the roads, to be really honest, and I kind of envisaged after I'd finished racing the first time that I'd only really ride mountain bikes. That didn't quite pan out, but riding off-road, it's just so much fun. I can completely see why gravel these days, I don't like the fact that it has to be given a niche name, but I can completely understand why people enjoy it so much. You're free, you're away from the traffic, it's just you and your bike, and in my eyes, that's exactly what cycling should be. Right, so there are quite a few training questions up there. Unfortunately, I can't read my own handwriting, which is a little bit silly. Hector Guevara and Simon I can't remember if that's a G or a V, Osgerby, and Andrew Verdon. All of them were asking about training for Criterium racing. Now, Criterium racing is mega intense. It's only an hour long, but it's still going to have a huge amount of aerobic fitness in there. Actually improving your ability to deliver oxygen to your muscles is always going to be the most important thing, especially when these races are around an hour to 75 minutes in length. So lots of those sustainable intensity efforts, so the sort of the 12 to 20 minute efforts, which are really targeting your functional threshold power. It really is a large component of your fitness, and it is one that you just simply can't neglect if you want to get faster on a bike. But once you've done that and you've gotten that sort of fitness to a level where you think, okay, this is good enough to be competitive now, to gain that extra edge, you want to do some lactate buffering efforts. So really short but really hard, intense efforts. It's not quite sprints, a little bit longer than that, so 30 to 60 seconds. And then lots of them in quick succession, so your body's not having that much time to recover. This is really going to help your lactate buffering, so your ability to recover with a high amount of that chemical within your muscle still. So a session that I used to do would be 30-second max effort sprints, and they really are, they start off as a sprint, but by the time you get into the end of the effort, technically or physiologically speaking, it's probably not a sprint anymore. 2.5 minutes off, and then repeat that 6 times. So 30-second max effort, 2.5 minute recoveries. By the end of it, I'd always struggle to lift my arms. It'd be an absolute mess on the bike. But that would be the interval session for that ride. You'd nurse yourself home then, and a few days later, by the time you've recovered from that, you really start to notice the benefits. And then when you go to race the next week, so if you do that about 7 to 10 days before your Criterium race, you really do notice the benefit. You just feel like you've got that, I wouldn't say an extra gear or anything, but it's almost like you can afford an extra breath, and you just feel like you're less out of breath when you're chasing it in the race. Richie Rosado left a couple of comments. One of them was, how about doing a workout of the week, which I think is a really cool idea, actually. If my workouts are that exciting and entertaining, then I'll definitely take you along with them. I quite like the way that the sprint workout went the other day, so if I can work out how to overlay the graphic and detail some of the more intricate parts of the training sessions, I think it'd be quite cool. Richie Rosado would really like to know, how do you discover what type of rider you are on a bike? Well, personally, Power Meter was something that helped reaffirm the sort of rider I was, but I already knew from racing that I was always quite good at the fast finishes and sprints. Didn't mean necessarily that I was a pure sprinter, but it does kind of steer you in the direction of thinking, well, maybe I am more of a sprint, more of a fast twitch rider. You kind of really know deep down, you know if you're good at going uphill, or you certainly know if you're not very good at going uphill. You'll also know if you're technically really good, which means that you might be good at the sort of the cyclocross races or the cross-country mountain biking, or maybe the Criterium races. But also you'll know if you have a fast finish, you'll know that you're really more likely to be a sprinter type of rider. And equally, if you know that you're the sort of rider that if it's hard and it's windy and you manage to either not lose the wheel, but you drop your mates when you're out riding and things like that, you'll know that you're one of the sustainable power output kind of riders, a time trialist. Cody Koch came up with, for a young school-age rider, what's the best way to build your fitness? So I'm assuming you want to build your on-bike fitness. Nonetheless, I think it's really important as a school-age rider to continue doing loads of different sports. It's something that I definitely neglected when I was at school. And I wish that I'd spent more time, now looking back, I wish that I'd spent more time creating this more rounded base of fitness. Because if I go for a run now, I'm utterly useless. Equally, if I was to go and try swimming, I wouldn't be very good at that either. So I think not only is that going to benefit you more and keep you less prone to injury. So my advice is don't neglect the other sports. Make sure you do a little bit of that. And then on the bike, you could aim to do around 6 to 10 hours of different stuff each week. So that could include an hour messing around in the garden or in a car park somewhere, just trying to do a few tricks, learning to ride backwards, learning to track stand, bunny hops, just skills that are actually going to be quite useful to you out on the bike when you're racing as well. being really comfortable at riding with no hands, things like that, they do become increasingly important. Making sure you've got good leg speed, because ultimately, even if you've got a 55-11 front ring and rear cassette, you're still going to need to pedal it really, really quickly to ride at 70 kilometers an hour. So leg speed is really important, and just building like a nice, comfortable feeling on the bike. So lots of contact time with the bike, riding in groups, feeling comfortable in a load of different scenarios, and that again comes back to maybe trying different disciplines as well. I appreciate it's not always going to be possible for everyone, but if you can be more comfortable on your bike in lots of different scenarios, that'll make you a much more well-rounded bike rider. Glenn Orkey's got a question about sprints and sprint intervals. So sprint gearing, this one. Glenn would like to know, should he be spinning or should he be grinding on these sprint intervals? And actually, I think the best way to improve your sprint is to do lots of different sprints. So do short sprints of just 6 seconds, do long sprints of 20 seconds, but also mix up with the gearing. So you want to do some where you're starting in a large gear, a gear that's way, way bigger than you would normally start sprinting. So it's almost like doing squats. So you're starting around 60 RPM. And then really grinding that out for the first 10 to 15 seconds before you slowly get on top of the gear. And once you get on top of the gear, then stop. But then equally, I also think you should do really high cadence leg speed intervals or sprints. So start off in the small ring, start at an average speed at a speed of around 25 kilometers an hour, 15 miles an hour, and just really explode into the pedals until you're pedaling out of the saddle at around 170 RPM. And once you get to that stage, stop the sprint, recover, aim to do 6 to 8 of these in each session. And it's a combination of building up the leg speed and the leg strength, and then slowly you'll notice that these gains are happening these sprint gains are happening because you're awakening the neuromuscular pathways, and your muscles are just adapting to the training stimulus that you're giving them. And then you'll find that when it comes to sprinting in the optimum gearing, you're just going to have that. You're going to be that much readier to sprint because you'll have done the training in different gearings. You'll be that much more practiced and that much more rehearsed at engaging all of those muscles, and you'll notice that you've got a much more powerful and smoother sprint. But always focus on having good form on the bike. So you don't want to be thrashing around on the bike. Make sure you're nice and stable, nice composed, good form. That'll be faster. Lord DeLego has left quite a few comments recently, which is really nice. He wants to know what needs to change, or wants to know what I think needs to change in order to keep the British race scene alive. And I think it's a really difficult question, actually. I think the Criterium style racing is exactly what we need. The many circuits, lots of passes through the finish line. But I also think we need to find a way of making the racing look more exciting. So what they've done with the 6-day races, with all the lights and all the music and things like that, I think that somehow, whether we like it or not, needs to come across the racing. I think racing is still perhaps a little bit too traditional in this country. The Tour Series has done an amazing job over recent years of absolutely transforming it, and I think it could be filmed in a way that makes it look even faster and exciting. The Tour Series is as fast as racing gets. The average speed isn't always that high because the circuits are really technical, but if you watch cyclocross, where the average speed is 20 to 25 kilometers an hour on a really fast circuit, it looks like they are absolutely tanking it. Whereas in the Tour Series, it doesn't always look that fast, partly because it's filmed off a motorbike in front of us, so it doesn't look like we're going as fast as we in reality are. So I think mixing things up and changing camera angles is one of the most important ways to make racing look more exciting. It may make it harder to track and understand what's going on in the race, but personally I think that's one of the big things. Maybe the whole global pandemic will help open the eyes of people now. So a lot of people have got their bikes out the sheds and got the bikes out the garage. I don't know how we convert those people into the world of cycle sport. Maybe they'll find a way of, maybe they'll enjoy it somehow. Be like, oh, I've ridden my bike, be interested again, watch a local bike race, something like that. I think the sport is in a really bizarre place because actually it's very healthy. Lots of people are riding bikes, but not that many people are interested in the racing side of it. Or maybe that's just human nature at the moment. Maybe the competitive side of the sport isn't what we should be pushing. Maybe we should just be pushing all of these non-competitive events, and then somehow we find a way of tagging a bike race onto the back of them. Maybe we're looking at it the wrong way around. Maybe we've always been doing it wrong by having competitive event with a mass participation event next to it. Maybe it should just be the other way. I don't know. I don't really have the answer. I think it's a really interesting question, though. I'd love to know what the answer is because I'd quite like to ride my bike for a few more years and race. Adrian Sims would like to know the age-old question: what is the best way to increase your functional threshold power? So your FTP, which is one of the largest proponents of your actual fitness. So if you want to power yourself along on the bike, you're going to need the ability to process lots of oxygen. And that's basically what your FTP is. The more power you can do at your functional threshold, or the point where your body is then creating loads more lactic acid than it can actually get rid of, the more power you can produce, the faster you're going to go. That's logical. One of my favourite ways of doing it is the 12-minute intervals. So not really long, not really hard. Ride along ride along uncomfortably fast for 12 minutes and then maybe do that 4 or 5 times in a session. So if you're going to ride your bike for 90 minutes, warm up for 10 minutes, 12 minutes on, 6 minutes off, 12 minutes on, 6 minutes off, that sort of thing. 3 to 5 reps, I think, is a really good number to aim for, but never go so hard that you're reaching your maximum heart rate. There's no need to do that anymore. I think years ago, brute force blunt instrument intervals were much more of a thing, whereas these days, actually, if you just tickle just beneath what you think your current threshold power is, or it's basically the most power you can sustain for an hour. So just stay down at around the 88 to 92% of that. And little and often, I think, is the best way to do it, definitely. Right, I think with those questions, we've covered a lot of the most frequently asked things. So a lot of the most frequently asked questions were about improving threshold power, improving your ability to do criterium racing, or improving your sprints. Now, with the sprint video that I did the other day, the training thoughts sprint video, hopefully you picked up on a few tips there. I'm going to do more of that sort of thing, probably once every week. So it may not be workout of the week, but you'll probably get like a training thoughts video from me once a week going forwards, just because it's the sort of thing I enjoy. I've enjoyed doing coaching. There's a link to the coaching that I offer down below in the description as well. And it's the sort of thing that gives me a real buzz, seeing people also improve riding their bike and enjoy it because they're getting better at it as well. So yeah, that's it from me. I'm now going to go and throw all of this into the world's slowest computer and hopefully come out with something that you're going to see on Monday afternoon with a little bit of luck on June the 1st. 12 years ago today, I won a bike race actually. I'll see if I can find a picture of that. It was the first race that I did after having glandular fever, and that was quite a cool moment, which is another question, but I'm going to save that for a special video, I think. Josh Power asked what my most memorable race or results were, and I think actually it'd be a really cool video because there's quite a few cool stories to tell about some of my racing days. My original racing days. Hopefully I've got quite a few more to look forward to in the future. Once again, I want to send an absolutely massive thank you to everyone that's taken the time to leave a comment, to leave a thumbs up, to share the video, to subscribe. It really does mean the world to me. It means the world to us at the team as well. The fact that we know that people are at least seeing our name out there, even though we're not racing at the moment. Coming up this week, I'm going to do another 360 ride. The idea with these 360 rides is to try and involve them with the running commentary over the top so that you feel like you're riding down these descents with me, and hopefully you'll get an understanding. Certainly if you're more of a beginner cyclist, you'll get an understanding of where to look on these descents, any hazards that are coming that you perhaps can't quite see or that you wouldn't know to look out for, and what I always call my escape plan as well. Although so far that's something that I've not really highlighted yet. The idea of the escape plan in my head is what would happen right now if I was to puncture or car pulled out or any of these things. It's a constant calculation in the back of my head, and the idea with these videos is to try and get it into the video, in the commentary, and hopefully it'll all make sense and line up somehow with the video that you're seeing as well. It turns out a lot of these thoughts happen very, very quickly, and you don't have, even my mouth can't keep up with my thoughts. If you have any video suggestions, it's always really cool to let me know what they are. I will read every comment. I will get around to replying to them all, either Michael or myself. And again, if you haven't done so already, it'd be really cool if you could send Steve a message in the comments down below as well. Thank you for watching. Big thumbs up from me, and I will definitely see you again soon.